Have you been wondering why you're not as motivated as you used to be, or you no longer find pleasure in activities that used to be really exciting and pleasurable? In this video, what I'm going to do is actually look at specific factors that are actually lowering your dopamine or killing your dopamine receptors. So for those of you who are brand new to my channel, my name is Lucas, the founder of Boost Your Biology. And in this video, what I'm going to do is look at how there are specific factors that are really playing a detrimental role in your ability to not only synthesize dopamine, but actually is making your dopamine essentially redundant through dopaminergic receptor downregulation. So the first factor that a lot of men need to really pay attention to is to stop watching pornography. This is a factor that a lot of men seem to consistently overlook as one of the reasons why they're not waking up motivated, not feeling driven, and actually struggle to get things done and are less productive than they've ever been. Now, what we need to consider here is the impact of pornography on dopaminergic tone and dopaminergic output. We can actually see here, in comparison to many other dopaminergic releases, amphetamine is by far the most potent at stimulating dopamine release. We can see that sex is also, mild to moderate. Nicotine is up there, sort of similar, but it's more carried out streamlined and longer term, or delayed action. Looking at cocaine is also highly detrimental and can spike dopamine levels. And then what we can see here is pornography, this is the estimated dopamine output over time. We can see that pornography can lead to a spike in dopamine and potentially even result in, after many more hours, a rapid decline in dopamine levels through internalization and desensitization. So we really need to consider the impact of pornography on general health and well-being for men. And I'd like to ask you guys a question. Do you personally respond very negatively to watching pornography? Or what have you noticed personally through, stopping or starting this particular practice? Please share your opinion down below in the comment section. Let's get a discussion going. The next factor that's dramatically affecting your dopaminergic tone and dopamine production is social media. We need to stop mindlessly scrolling on social media and looking at specific posts and things that are blatantly just attention grabbing and designed to give you that dopaminergic hit. Instead, we should be using, considering social media use as a platform to help educate ourselves. And hopefully my YouTube channel is an example of that. Creating content to actually better your quality of life, not reduce your quality of life. That's one of my number one missions, is to create content that actually has high impact, that changes lives and makes people's lives a lot better. Subscribe to channels like myself who are on the same mission to better your health. And we need to just stop mindlessly scrolling on social media in our spare time, because that can also promote ADHD-like tendencies, because it's designing and training your brain to view content in a very fast format and very quick setting. And that can affect your ability to focus, let's say on a task that requires your focus for a number of hours. Now, the next factor that's robbing your dopamine system or affecting dopamine output is we need to consider taking breaks from stimulants. Now, we can see this study here was titled Effects of Stimulant Drug Use on the Dopaminergic System, a systematic review and meta-analysis of in vivo neuroimaging studies. And what they noted was that many of these dopaminergic stimulants can actually lead to dopamine receptor downregulation. And some of these stimulants that I'm referring to include caffeine. So many of us will notice how regular caffeine consumption can lead to, particularly after stopping use, can lead to dopamine withdrawal. Many designer stimulants such as 2-fluoroamphetamine and other designer drugs can actually lead to dopaminergic cell loss and downregulation. Nicotine is another example we need to take breaks from. Ritalin, Adderall, and Vyvanse. These are other medications that also can really deleteriously affect the dopamine system and lead to compromised production and efficiency of the whole dopaminergic system. The next factor that we need to consider is lack of sunlight. Now, sunlight exposure, you'll get some guys in the camp that are saying that, sunlight exposure, we should avoid all sun exposure because it's going to give us skin cancer. Then you've got the other side of the camp who promote sun exposure, specifically on the body, face exposure, eyes obviously not directly at the sun. But we can see here this study was titled Sunshine Exposure Variation of Human Striatal Dopamine D2 and D3 Receptor Availability in Healthy Volunteers. And we can see the results of this study indicated or demonstrated that striatal dopamine D2 and D3 receptor availability was significantly greater in the subjects with high sunshine exposure than in those with low sunshine exposure after controlling for age, sex, and smoking status. What we can see here is that essentially sunlight can help to make dopamine more efficient in the body by supporting and upregulating the production of the dopamine receptors D2 and D3. Now, the D2 and D3 receptors are both extremely important for motivation, drive, rewarding behaviors, rewarding effects, and also the pleasure response. So I'll actually dedicate another video to these dopamine receptors. Maybe I'll dive deep into what happens when we actually upregulate D3 receptors, what happens when we downregulate D2 receptors, and I'll go deep into these receptors because I know a lot of guys are really looking forward to that sort of content. So you'll be seeing that shortly. Now, the next factor that's also robbing your dopamine is actually consuming serotonin boosting foods. So foods like kiwi fruit, which kiwi fruit is rich in phytoserotonin. This is one of the reasons why I always recommend kiwi fruit later in the evening, more so before bed. I've done an Instagram post looking at the benefits of kiwi fruit. We want to be avoiding kiwi fruit, during the daytime because that's rich in phytoserotonin. And my suspicion is that these serotonin rich foods can actually compete with dopamine balance in the brain. Another example is turkey. If you consume turkey during the daytime, how do you actually feel after consuming a big bolus, a big dosage, or a big amount of turkey? Like, do you feel more sluggish, sleepy, tired, lethargic? That's something you need to consider, whether or not specific foods are affecting your dopaminergic tone. And then finally, we're looking at poorly digested fibrous foods. So any food that can irritate the gut lining can actually lead to an increase in serotonin, and that increase in serotonin can affect or change the balance between dopamine and serotonin, and that can affect your overall dopamine tone. Now, low testosterone is also a factor that could be contributing to your low dopamine state, and this could be robbing you of your dopamine. Now, I do want to emphasize that by boosting dopamine, we also oftentimes see an increase in testosterone and vice versa. So an increase in testosterone can also lead to an increase in dopamine. And this study here was titled Testosterone Induces Molecular Changes in Dopamine Signaling Pathway Molecules in the adolescent male rat nigrostriatal pathway. And what they noted was that dopamine receptor D2 mRNA was increased and D3 mRNA was decreased in substantia nigra and or striatum by androgens. These data suggest that increased testosterone at adolescents may change dopamine responsivity of their nigrostriatal pathway by modulating at a molecular level the capacity of neurons to transport and respond to dopamine. This is not the only study that looks at how testosterone can affect dopamine. There's another one that looks at how testosterone can promote physical activity by increasing dopamine as well. So make sure you're not living with low testosterone, because that is completely and very powerfully lowering your baseline level of dopamine. Then we're looking at nutrient deficiencies. So here I just use a basic example of how specific nutrients such as vitamin B6, folate, iron, magnesium, vitamin C, copper, these are cofactors to actually convert tyrosine into L-DOPA, and then from L-DOPA into dopamine and eventually noradrenaline. So any specific nutrient deficiency can lead to compromised dopamine production. So make sure you're assessing your nutrient status to make sure you're not missing out on any of the essential cofactors that actually are required to convert the food that you eat actually into dopamine. So that's something that we also need to consider. So is it possible to resensitize dopamine again? Now be sure to search my channel for dopamine related videos. And also in the future, I will dedicate a video to dopamine restoration, how we can upregulate the dopamine system and to basically help enable you to feel motivated again and more pleasure from activities. And also for those guys that are interested in boosting their energy, motivation, and confidence, do check out the Limitless Men's Energy program that will be linked down below in the video description. This is a brand new program that I've designed specifically to help men achieve radiant energy, motivation, and confidence through optimizing nutrition, hormones, sleep, and through the use of customized nootropic stacks. So you'll get the chance to work with me if you decide to enroll in Limitless. So definitely try and book a call to join the Limitless Men's Energy program down below. Otherwise, thank you for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.